Hello everyone. Today with me I have on All About FP&A none other than the FP&A guy. So we have with us Paul Barnhurst. Paul has about 20 years of experience in senior finance and FP&A roles. He has worked with organizations like US Navy, Amex, Solera and DigiCert. He is the host of FP&A Today podcast. He is also an entrepreneur and founder of the FP&A guy. Welcome to All About FP&A, Paul.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Appreciate you having me on the show.
I am very excited about this episode as well. So me and Paul have been in touch for over a year now. We've met a few, I think half a dozen times over Slack and on Zoom. So we've been waiting to do this, I think, for a long time. So again, very excited to do this. So before we go ahead, could you let our viewers know a little bit about your background?
No, I'd be happy to tell a little bit about my background. So, I actually started my career in procurement, writing government contracts. Mm-hmm. And so that was with the Navy, worked for them for about 4 years. Then I went back to grad school and graduated in 2008. And that's when I started to make a shift. I was in a financial analyst role. It was in the business, did a little bit of forecasting and different things, and then moved over into an FP&A role and been there ever since. So really, I think it was late 2009 when I had my first kind of formal FP&A role, even though I'd been doing some things that tied closely to FP&A and, been doing it ever since. Started my own business, as you know, about a year ago after working for a few large global companies and really enjoying it. Get to do the podcast, a lot of other things, love the FP&A space and just excited to chat with you here for a few minutes.
Amazing. So what is it that you love about FP&A and why did you decide to move into FP&A from your previous role, which was more on the government side?
Yeah. So, I realized pretty quickly writing government contracts was not where I wanted to be for a career. When I went to grad school, originally I had planned on doing supply chain with an information management degree. And I did my first finance class. I really enjoyed it. Took the advanced finance, loved that class, and switched to doing a finance specialization. So that's kind of the journey of how I made that switch from doing procurement, supply chain area into finance. I've always enjoyed numbers. And then as far as FP&A, I think, the thing I like most about it is the business partnering. I can't say I love the budgeting and the budgeting part. I mean, there's aspects of it, but what I really enjoy is working with the business, figuring out how you get there, helping drive change and improvement and moving the business forward. I think that's the strategic, the partnering, the value add activities. That's really the part of FP&A I enjoy.
I love the honesty that you mentioned that you don't like budgeting to be on. So I love that part. And yes, I agree. I made a switch to FP&A, which I didn't know about like when I made the switch, but all of these reasons also resonate with me because of which I am also working in FP&A. So we just completed 2022. We are in the first week of 2023. Could you talk about a couple of your accomplishments that you're proud of in 2022?
Yeah, so from a professional standpoint, first and foremost, I'm proud that I made the jump to full time. That was a big decision for me and glad I did that. On top of that, I'd say there's probably 2 or 3 things I'm most proud of. First would be the FP&A market guide that was published with Anders and with Wouter. I mean, I spent, tons of hours, well over 100 hours on that, met with, a lot of different companies. So I think that and just the work I've done in the tool space is something I'm very proud of. And, in 2022, I met with basically about 100 companies roughly throughout the year. Many CEOs, all different sizes, most of those being planning tools. So I think that's something that I was able to, kind of scale up and really learn so much about the space and bring value there is something I'm really proud of. And then on top of that is just the training I've been able to do. Seeing the moments when somebody gets it, you're training them on Excel or FP&A or whatever it might be. I've been fortunate to have a great partner there. I know you had him on the show recently, Ron Montero. And, that's been something I'm really proud of. So I think just in general, I'm grateful for all the value that I've been able to bring. Within that, I love when people send me a note and say, thank you for doing this or that, or, hey, you really helped me with something, or I'm learning a lot from you. I'm sure you get that. You get notes from people, and that's really rewarding, right? It makes me feel like, okay, I'm making a difference versus just running a business.
Yes. A couple of follow-up questions. First, thank you so much for introducing me to Ron. We met, I think, 2 weeks back, and we recorded a episode. So thank you so much. And the question I had on this was, how did you get started in the tool space? So meeting 100 vendors, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of effort. You mentioned the guide. I read the guide, and I think it'll help a lot of companies who want to implement FP&A books, which are confused which tools to use. So how did you get started onto this?
Yeah. And before I jump into that, there was one other accomplishment that I failed to mention. I just want to throw out, is just launching a podcast, doing what you're doing. I know how much work it is. That's something that's been a huge accomplishment. We're closing in on 50,000 downloads for that, and another, 5,000 views on YouTube. So that's something, and I couldn't have done that without Data Rails. It's great partners. I've been really fortunate there. But, switching gears back to the tools, honestly, where it started is, a couple of years ago, I built a website called excelreviews.net. And I was doing a few things around Excel. And the idea was I was going to start reviewing some of the training, because there's so much training out there, and a lot of it is not great. Well, there's some really good stuff, but there's some of it that's just kind of thrown together. It's training you on Excel of 10 years ago. So I started with writing some articles, never really had time. And then what happened is with the tools is I was looking for a change. I wanted to work for a small business, and I honestly wanted to work for a couple FP&A tools. So I'd interviewed with some of the tools in the space, was a finalist with one company, trying to get an interview with another. And so I threw out some posts about them and said a few things about them. And then someone said, hey, I got a tool out there. They wanted to talk to me, and I talked to them. And so I all of a sudden started finding, because I did a lot about Excel, and I talk about, within Excel, the right tool. Also, I wrote about a couple tools. They started reaching out to me, and I looked at this and said, I think there's something here. I could probably differentiate myself with tools. And so I started to double down more and more on that, not knowing exactly what I was going to do. And about that time, Anders and Wouter reached out and said, hey, we want to put together this 3rd generation market guide, and we'd like you to write it with us. And so I said, sure. And so I led that project, and that led to meeting with a lot more vendors. And then the more I met with them, the more they reached out to me, and it just continued to kind of build on itself where, now I have, if I don't hear from a vendor in a week, I'm shocked. Pretty much a new vendor that I haven't heard of before. It's usually at least 1 or 2 a week. Like I got one this week, from somebody, hey, I want to show you my new tool. Actually, I think I got 2 this week. Another guy reached out and said, hey, I just found your market guide. I just changed my goal. My goal is to be in next year's market guide. Well, I'm like, all right, that's when I know it's, resonating in the market.
I'm sure this is going to be a big space. So because there are so many tools coming up, it'll be a lot of confusion among FP&A teams who want to implement tools. So it'll be a great help to both the tools company or the software company and the FP&A team if you can guide them which tool is best for them. So they might be like 5 different tools that they can use, but they might be just like the 1 or 2 tools that might be just for them. I think this is a great space to be in, and congratulations on the tools guide again.
Thank you. Yeah, no, now I totally agree. Can I add one thing to that real quick, and then I'll let you go on? When you talk about tools, I get asked all the time, what's the best tool? And what you said really well there is helping them understand, 4 or 5 tools. Is I always say, okay, do you want to stay in Excel? Are you using, Google Sheets? Do you want to completely get away from Excel? What size is your company? What system do you integrate with? Everybody I get so many people asking me, well, what's the best tool? I'm like, there's not a best tool. There's some tools right now I think are winning in the marketplace. And even some of those I may not say are the best tool per se. And so it's really about knowing your needs, knowing what can fill those needs, both short-term and long-term, and then making a decision that works with your team, your processes, and helps drive efficiency. And that can be one of many tools.
Understood. Yes, I agree. Now I'll come back to the FP&A Today podcast. So you mentioned about the FP&A Today podcast, and I have listened to a few dozen episodes myself. So first, how did that get started? So you mentioned Rails. So how did that get started? And now you've interviewed more than 30 plus folks, I think 40 plus folks. So is there, because we are FP&A people, we try to find trends, or we find to we tend to find patterns. So were there any patterns you noticed which you would like to share after meeting like 30, 40 FP&A or finance experts?
Yeah. So, a couple questions there we'll unpack. First, how it started is I had a few different vendors reach out to me as I started writing more about them wanting to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
And Aviv, the new head of marketing at Data Rails, had reached out to me, and I mentioned I wanted to do a podcast, and that would be great for them to host it. And they'd mentioned they wanted to do a podcast as well. And one thing led to another. And about a month later, we came to an agreement. It was a month, 6 weeks later. There's a little bit of pause in there. We worked it out, and we started the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm really excited to have them, like I said, as a partner. So that's how it started. As far as kind of learnings, definitely there are some learnings. There's a few things I've really picked up. The first is kind of the fun one. Index match is, a favorite of FP&A people. That's one thing that, the most common function people mention. So that's kind of a fun one, but more around traditional FP&A is one, just to see how much breadth there is, different areas you can focus. You have people that look, it's all about communication. You have others, hey, it's really about your Excel skills. The number one thing you should do is Excel. Another one, it's networking. Another, it's lifelong learning. It's you definitely see themes and trends, but it's also amazing the amount of diversity in career path, diversity in, what you should focus on, whether it should just be, speaking, whether it should be, kind of that partnering. Some people are big on the technical skills, and in all those different areas, you can be effective. I mean, obviously you have to have a baseline of a certain set of skills. Like you can't just be great at communication, have no idea how to use a spreadsheet or how to financial model. There's a baseline, but after that, there's a lot of paths to success. I mean, obviously communication is critical and there are key things, but there's so many different areas you can really be an expert on. And if you develop the right skill set, you can still be very successful.
Right. So you mentioned like I could pick up two or three themes. One is Excel and financial modeling. So that is a skill. Another one is focusing on communication, presentations, and then you talked about networking as well.
Yep. So I think those are a couple good themes. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing it with everyone. We talked about 2022. Now we are in 2023. It's the first weekend of 2023. So what are you working on in 2023? People would love to know what's the next big thing that you're working on.
Yeah. So I have a lot of exciting things going on. One, I'm working on my first couple digital courses. Those should hopefully be out by the end of January, at least one, if not two. In addition to that, launch my first virtual FP&A course. We have our first cohort starting on the 17th. I'm doing that with Ron Montero. I'm partnering there. So, more exciting things coming on the training side. Late last year, we launched a visualization course that we're doing for corporate training. And then on the tool space, I think there's a lot of really exciting things. I'm meeting next week to start working on this year's market guide, which I'm just oh my goodness, I just barely finished that thing. But it's a long, involved process. When you have to demo and survey and how quick this marketplace is growing, we got to make the criteria even more rigorous and defined so we can clearly explain, why we included who we did, because there's so many tools out there. So I got that going on, and I'm getting ready to work on two other guides. I'm working on a spreadsheet guide, because I think it's important for people to realize there are alternatives to Excel and Google Sheets. There are some innovative and creative things being done out there that people don't realize. And there's times when it might meet their needs. So we're looking at I'm partnering with somebody on that, a spreadsheet guide, and also looking at which I think is a trend we'll continue to see 23 and 24 in the planning space, is what I call an integrated BI platform. So really a company-wide platform. So companies use Power BI, Tableau, Click. whatever, Focus software, there's a number of them. And what they've done is they've built the planning tool integrated into the BI tool. And you can actually write back straight from your dashboards and your tools to the system and do your planning straight in your BI tool. So it kind of brings the analytics and planning together. And we're seeing more and more of a convergence of that in different ways. And I think we'll continue to see more kind of integration and collaboration across that because it drives efficiency versus having a planning tool over here that pulls in all this data, having a BI tool over here that pulls in all the data and paying to do that twice, for different reasons. And sometimes that's efficient, but I think bringing it together. So working on a guide with somebody on just strictly the integrated BI tools, because I think that's a unique kind of use case that we're seeing more of.
Amazing. And on the trainings, how can people access them? So you mentioned it'll come out sometime later this year. So
yeah, it will be on my website when they come out. And, I'll also post it out on LinkedIn and share it widely. The virtual course is already up on my website. I think you have it up on yours as well. I'm making a few changes to that. And then if people are interested in corporate training, which is mostly what I've done, they can contact me. They can go to the website and schedule a meeting or send me an email.
So we will include the links to both the FP&A Today podcast as well as the FP&A Guy website where you can find these trainings whenever this is uploaded. And next, you mentioned was on the tools guide. So when is that going to launch? I know it's a difficult question to answer.
We don't have a target date for publishing it yet. Last year, I will say originally, I think we talked about at one point getting it out by May or June. Then it slid to July. Then it was, we're going to get out in August. And it ended up being, probably late September. So I'm not committing to a date at this point. Last year, we probably had our first meeting in February and we released it in September. Now, obviously, we know what we're doing better this year, but there's also a lot more tools. A lot have opened up over the last year. So it's going to be, I think, a little more challenging in the sense of, we can't cover 30 tools in the guide. It's not I don't think that drives value for the end user. And so it's trying to make sure we have a rigorous process to kind of narrow that down and make sure we have the right scope. So I expect, if I had to guess, probably summer, but don't hold me to any date.
No, we won't. So I wanted to launch my book this year. I think we are in 2023 now. I should get used to 2023. So I wanted to launch in July and I ended up launching it in November. So it usually takes more time than you think when you're doing a big project. So
you understand.
We will not hold you to the date. We're just curious to know when can we expect it.
Yep.
And look forward to the spreadsheet guides as well. And the BI tool integration, that sounds interesting as well. So how can people learn more about that if people are interested in knowing more about that?
Yeah, I think the best way is they can contact me for now. Once those guides are out, I'll have them on my website. They'll be circulated for LinkedIn and other ways. On all three of those guides, I don't have a target release date on any of them yet. Very early planning. We've probably made the most progress on the spreadsheet guide. The BI one, I think I'm meeting with the person I'm going to be working with. I have someone very technical in business intelligence that's been in FP&A finance, but he's kind of chosen that technical route that's going to help with those tools because those get a little more technical than other tools. And so we want to cover that aspect as well. But as far as release dates, hard to say. If people are interested in them, LinkedIn or they can contact me through my website and I can, give them an update to whatever I have.
Awesome. So looking forward to all of these new project releases that you have planned for 2023. I also heard about FP&A demo days. So what are FP&A demo days?
Yeah, great question. So I have actually events coming up. One is I'm partnering with Ernie Humphreys in March. We're calling it Third Generation FP&A Demo Days, and it's a build off the guide. So what we've had is many of the vendors from the guide are going to come together and we're going to show those tools, show the best of those tools so people can see and be like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense for my business. So a lot of these are small to mid-market type tools such as causal, abacum, double fin, data rails. I'm trying to remember all the names: Giraffe, Drivetrain, and there hopefully will be a few others. We'll have up to 10. And in addition to the demos, mixed in that over a 2-day virtual event will be things like, hey, solution strategy for selecting your tool. And we'll be bringing different experts that have dealt with that to speak on those subjects. We'll have some panels. We'll have a business case, like a video where we're probably showing the best of these kind of different tools so people can see. Myself, and it looks like right now, probably Waterborne will speak about the landscape and what we're seeing in the marketplace. And so I think it's going to be one of the best events of the year when it comes to FP&A tools. That's free. It's March 15th and 16th. I can send you the link. I would love for you to put that in your show notes. Anyone's welcome to register. And then the second event I'm doing, which I'm just as excited about, but different opportunities. I've partnered with Ray Reich of RevOps Squared and Ben Murray, the SaaS CFO. So they're really driving this, and I'm, working with them. We're bringing together a 3-day event focused strictly on SaaS tools. So it's the SaaS Solution Showcase. Day one is around billing management, contract management, billing, your tools. Then we have a day about reporting and analytics. So, what tools help you manage all those SaaS KPIs? Because most companies are still doing it in Excel. And you know how hard it can be when you're pulling from all the different sources and trying to do a waterfall and cohort analysis and all those type of things. So that's day 2. And then day 3 is going to be around spend management. So tools that help, whether it's SaaS spend, travel spend, vendors, whatever, but just around general spend management. And so people can select to attend one or all the demos, whatever they want. They'll also unveil their survey. So Ben Murray does a tech stack survey every year for SaaS technology, interviews several hundred companies. And they're going to be unveiled the results of this year's survey at that showcase.
Amazing. So looking forward to both the events, and we'll have the links to the FP&A today, not the FP&A today, the FP&A demo days. The name FP&A today is stuck in my mind. So
that's all right. That's a good name to have stuck in your mind. I like that name.
So FP&A demo days link we'll have in the video description wherever this goes, and also on LinkedIn whenever it is posted. So people can join in. I think it'll be a great event, and you should definitely check it out. All right. So next segment on our show is very interesting. So we're doing this for the very first time. So this is an experiment on you, Paul. If it works, we'll keep this.
That's all right. I like being a guinea pig. It's all good.
So we have some questions from the FP&A community, and most of them are our friends. So I'll ask you a question and mention the name who has asked that question, and it'll be great if you can answer them.
Sure.
Okay. So first question is from Jordan. He's asked you, what is your favorite food and what motivates you every day?
As far as favorite food, I have to laugh because I asked Jordan what was something unique about him on my podcast. And I don't know if you saw this. He said hot dog and showed his tattoo and explained it all, right?
I think it was a very second or the third episode. I do remember.
It was actually the very first episode we did. Yeah. And so, as far as food, I like food too much right now, and I'm trying to cut back. But that's another story. Some of my favorite, I love a good Mexican dish. That's probably one of my favorite. I enjoy food with strong flavors. I like, Indian food, not super spicy, but I like some curry. I don't want just straight heat, but I really like food with a strong flavor and a little bit of heat. So I've always enjoyed, Mexican food is probably one of my favorites.
Amazing. And what an Indian do you like? So I'm curious about that. So what
I love their breads. I like some of the rices they do. I like things with curry in it. So just in general, I like going to an Indian restaurant, and I'll try just about anything. Unfortunately, my better half can't do curry and the spices. So if I ever go, it's usually when I'm on travel or going, kind of on my own, because she's like, you're on your own. I'm not going to those restaurants with you.
It's a little spicy for people outside India. So I was curious to know what did you try? Anyways,
I had a good friend of mine at my last job that was Indian, and she took me to a restaurant. We, sampled a little bit of everything. Like when I have friends that are like, take me to the good Indian restaurant. So, and they always do.
We could do that when we meet anytime, maybe this year, next year, whenever we do that.
Yeah.
Next question is from Chris Rayleigh. Uh, he's asking, what was the inflection point when you knew that your personal venture is going to be successful? And what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started out?
Those are two great questions. So for me, I think it's kind of funny. I don't know that there was a key inflection point when I started growing the business, but I think the point when I knew I could go out on my own and be successful was when in 1 month I had, Ron Montero reach out to me and say, "Hey, I need someone to build me some Excel training." All right, well, I can generate a little bit of revenue there. I'll do this as a side thing. Someone else had reached out to me and, "Hey, we need some help consulting part-time." I'm like, okay, that can be a side thing. And then in 1 week, 3 vendors reached out to me in the tool space over a year ago, wanting to do collaborations, a couple of them wanting to hire me. And so I went to my wife and I'm like, "I can turn this into a business." And she kind of looked at me like, "Yeah, right. Like, slow down, slow the roll there." And we talked through it for probably the next 6 weeks and probably mid-February. And one morning, she just looks at me and she goes, "Okay, you can start your business." I go, "Are you sure? Because I'm going to put my notice in today." She's like, "Yeah, I'm sure." And I put in my notice that morning.
Wow.
And so that was the first point. I think the second thing, when I really, started to know that I could really grow this and it could be successful, was particularly like the response to the market guide. And when I started to have a lead generation engine that had the companies reaching out to me weekly, right? I've done zero marketing spend for my business. My marketing has been hundreds of hours of work. Don't misunderstand me.
Yep.
But I've done no marketing spend. And yet I still get leads every single week.
Yep. I think we are, so I think the LinkedIn work that we do, I think that's a great place to do marketing. So I think thanks to LinkedIn that a lot of marketing spends get there. We share a lot of good content and that's our marketing. We don't have to spend money on it.
Yep, 100% agree. I mean, without LinkedIn, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Just full stop. This business would have never happened.
Yep. The next question is from Nicholas Butcher. He's asking you, so this is question for both of us. So he's asking you, what is one skill that you would like to pick up from me? And then I'll answer the same question for you.
Yeah, one thing I've really liked about you is the book you've written. I think that's great. And I love watching how you help people early in FP&A. I've done a little bit that, so I'd love to, maybe chat more on just how you've best been able to help them. Because I get asked, from people all the time, and I think you've done a really good job there. And I've been really impressed in the way you've helped the people starting in their careers and really helping with the basics of FP&A. I think you've done a really good job there. And I've also been impressed with how you built the video, because that's on my list. I need to do more YouTube stuff, how you started growing that area. So.
Thank you so much. So let me answer that for you now. So the video, I think one of the skill I am trying to learn from you is the podcasting skill. So this is my, I think, 7th or 8th episode. You've already done 40. So I will be, when I get time over the weekend, I'll be watching a lot of your episodes and try to pick up some of the podcasting skills so that I can use it in my podcast. So that is something I'll definitely look up to you. And the second is I cannot forget the tools. So I get overwhelmed when people approach me to review the tools. So I'd love to pick up your brain. How do you manage to review so many tools? So those are the 2 skills that I'd definitely love to pick up from you.
And I'll let you in on a little secret. It's hard sometimes. There's honestly moments when I'm just like, all right, it's another web app with some kind of modeling tool, some workflow, collaboration, and reports. How do I distinguish this from the other 55 I've seen? There's times when they're really different, but it can be overwhelming. You're not alone on that, but I'll be happy to share some of my thoughts there. We can chat on that.
Amazing. So I'll definitely reach out to you after this. The last question we have is from Anders. He's asking you, what's the most important thing for an FP&A professional to learn to be successful in their career?
That's, it's a great question and it's really hard, but I think, the number one thing is learning to communicate and influence so you can help just drive decision making. Because if you can't present well, you can't speak well, you can't help influence what's going on, you can't really make an impact. Doesn't matter how good you are at modeling, Excel, all the other skills. So I think really, the first thing I'd recommend is really learn how to communicate. And when I say communicate, that includes, telling the story and influencing the decision. That all kinds to go together. So it goes beyond just communication. There's some emotional intelligence and recognizing and learning about people. But I think that area will help you more in your career than anything else. I mean, it's not that hard to learn to model, to learn Excel. You just put in the time. But so rarely do we really stop and think about, okay, the psychology of how do I own this room? How do I influence the decision? And learning how to really do that and how to present in such a way that you can have an impact will do more for your career than any of the others, I would say. What about you? What would you say?
I would agree. So communication, especially for folks who are not starting out, especially people who have been in finance and FP&A for say more than 5 years, they already know a little bit of Excel. They already know a little bit of Power BI or Tableau, whatever they use. The thing that will distinguish is communication and how they present themselves, how they build their network within the organization, not necessarily just on LinkedIn, but also within, if it's a large organization, it's also important to build your networks within the organization. So communication will definitely help. So I 100% agree with that.
Good.
Right.
We agree. Same answer.
Yep. So that was the end of that segment. Before we go, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So I usually ask this to everyone on my show. So what do you do, Paul, in order to continuously learning? So what are the books, courses, podcasts that you are reading, watching right now, listening to right now? And do you recommend any of them?
Yeah. So, when it comes to podcasts, I bounce around to episodes here and there. When it comes to reading, I have some technical books as we can see, but I mostly kind of turn off and read a lot of young adult fiction because it's kind of my escape time to read. As far as the continuous learning, I'm always learning what the new Excel formulas and functions are. I stay up on that. I try to watch videos from time to time. Lately, I've been so busy, I haven't spent as much time on the education as like. But one thing I am doing is I am taking the financial planning and analysis certification this year.
Oh, wow.
So I'm studying for that right now. And, when I'm done with that, I'm hoping to also take the next year, probably, the Financial Modeling Institute's Advanced Financial Modeler certification. So, just in addition to, one of the things I do to keep up is creating content. You do a lot of reading. Whenever I write an article, if I do a sponsored article for a vendor, I usually read 4 or 5 articles on the subject before I even write, just so I can feel like I'm really educated. I can feel comfortable. Even if it's a subject I know well, I always will just go out and read some of the latest thoughts on it. And so those are some of the things I do to try to keep myself, educated, make sure I know what's going on in the space.
I agree on so when you are writing or when you're publishing content on LinkedIn, you are anyways doing a lot of reading, writing around that, because you don't want people to feel that you're putting out content that is not well researched or it is not very useful. So you have to do that when you write and publish content. So amazing. Before we wrap up, the last question is again very similar to what Anders asked you, but this is to people who are just starting out in FP&A. We talked about communication, which might be for folks who are slightly more senior. So what's your advice to people who are just starting out in FP&A, who are just coming out of college or just completed their CPA designation, CA designation?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. First, I would say, find a mentor, someone who can help guide you. It doesn't need to be a formal mentorship relationship, but have those trusted people that have more experience with you that you can talk to. Be ideal if you have someone in your work environment that you can kind of turn to, and then someone outside. Because sometimes there's things you want to talk about with work that you can't talk to somebody in a work environment. So that's the first thing I would say. Second is network. Just put the time in. I wish I would have started my career and done networking. I'd be much further ahead today than where I am because I didn't take advantage of that. So I think those are probably the two things right off the top. And that applies to any field, right? Not just FP&A, but really, have a good mentor, to learn how to network. And then, third thing, anyone early in the career is, work hard. You also need to work smart, but put in the time. Doesn't mean you need to work 80 hours a week, but but be committed.
So advice from the FP&A guy to you is continue or start building your network and continue doing that all your career. And what was the other thing you mentioned? The third thing?
Yeah. So I said three things. I said, have a mentor, network, and
right.
then just, work hard, right? Be committed.
Work hard, have a mentor, and continue to network, and you'll be fine. So thank you so much, Paul. This was an amazing conversation. I was I was truly honored to have you on the show. I hope we do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, no, I'd love to be on it again. And, same goes for you. I'm really excited for our audience to, your audience to get to hear you on my podcast as well, and to have that opportunity to interview you and just to get to know you over the last year. I appreciate your friendship, and I hope, that things continue to go well for you. I love watching you build your brand and share so much in the FP&A space. So, big congratulations to you and all you're doing.
Thank you so much. And I'll make sure that we time these episodes around the same time so that people get to see both the sides together.
Sounds
all right.
Good.
Thank you so much, Paul. Bye-bye.
Thanks.